All right, I'll give you guys exactly 15 minutes. What's this? Come on, who left their shoe out in the middle of the deck?
Could be mine, Sergeant. What size is it?
What if the toughest man on television, the one who made millions laugh with a single barked command, was quietly battling something no one could see? Frank Sutton, forever etched in our memories as Sergeant. Carter seemed larger than life, until the day the spotlight dimmed for good. But behind the booming voice and steely glare was a truth no script ever revealed. Secrets, missed warnings, and a heartbreaking final act that no one saw coming. This isn't just a story about an actor. It's a lesson in what we lose when we ignore what matters most. And the most surprising part? His greatest performance may have never been on screen. There was something almost eerie about how little anyone knew of Frank Sutton's earliest years. Yet every time he stepped onto a stage, he revealed more truth than most actors ever could. Born Frank Spencer Sutton on October 23, 1923, in Clarksville, Tennessee, he was a boy shaped by hardship and curiosity. Growing up amid the struggles of the Great Depression, he haunted local theaters and school productions like a magnet drawn to the spotlight. By high school, he was already stealing scenes. He later said, "The first time I walked out on a stage, I had a warm feeling. I wanted to be an actor." That moment ignited a fire he would chase all his life, a fire fueled by grit and a rare sensitivity. That passion earned him a spot at Columbia University, where he majored in drama and graduated cum laude in 1952. But before diplomas and applause, war called. After Pearl Harbor, he tried to enlist in the Marines, but was rejected for colorblindness. Hooks you in, right? He didn't stop. Sutton joined the U.S. Army instead, serving from 1943 to 1946 in the grueling Pacific Theater. He stormed beaches 14 times, from Leyte to Luzon, earning both a Bronze Star and Purple Heart for valor. That military crucible would haunt and shape the man who'd later become everyone's favorite drill sergeant. Discharged as a sergeant, Sutton returned to New York like a man reborn, determined to pour everything he'd learned into his craft. He kept night classes at Columbia while acting on daytime television. He landed a breakout in Marty, 1955, the Oscar-winning film starring Ernest Borgnine. Though his role was small, his performance resonated, opening Hollywood doors and proving he was more than just another face. Still, the real breakthrough came in 1964. In a twist no one saw coming, Sutton landed the role that would define his legacy. Gunnery Sergeant Vince Carter on Gomer Pyle, U.S.M.C., a spin-off of The Andy Griffith Show. The first moment he barked at Jim Nabors' bumbling Pyle, viewers leaned in. That explosive tension, the gruff drill instructor versus the naive private, became TV gold. At its peak, the show never dropped below number 10 in Nielsen ratings, sometimes soaring to number 2, and firmly cemented Sutton's voice in living rooms across America. What made the show irresistible wasn't just the comedy. It was the contrast between Sutton's real-life humility and his on-screen presence. In interviews, he explained that despite not being a Marine, his Army experience lent authenticity. He called it no difference, preparing for a comedy Marine show or a dead-serious Marine role. In fact, Sutton paid his own way to Vietnam in 1966, staging 56 shows in just 8 days for Marines in Da Nang, Chu Lai, and Phu Bai, bringing laughter and relief halfway around the world. That hidden contrast became the show's emotional backbone, the stern Sergeant Carter who, beneath the bark, was shaped by empathy, discipline, and a deep understanding of sacrifice. Character development in sitcom form. Audiences connected with that duality. A man who could be both harsh and deeply human. It gave the character dimension and tethered the comedy to something real. Behind the scenes, Sutton's own life reflected the same balance. Married since 1946 to Toby Eigler, a soap opera writer, he was not only a soldier-turned-actor, he was a devoted father to their two children, Joe and Amanda, born 1954 and 1964. Friends remember him as an intellectual, keeping a personal library of 3,000 volumes at his Beverly Hills home. He read Shakespeare as often as he studied method techniques. When Gomer Pyle ended in 1969, many assumed Sutton would fade. Instead, he transitioned into the Jim Neighbors Hour, 1969 to 1971, with his co-star Ronnie Schell. The variety format let him peel back more layers, comedy sketches, singing bits, small moments that revealed his charm beyond the rigid sergeant persona. For the audience, it was a reminder that the man behind the bark was warm, funny, and textured. By the early 1970s, Sutton had pivoted again, this time to dinner theater. He toured the country, performing plays like The Odd Couple and Love, trading TV cameras for live stages and real-time connection with audiences. Critics noticed that despite his sitcom fame, he approached the stage with scholarly discipline. Always hungry, always digging deeper. In May 1974, he arrived in Shreve. His wife Toby, daughter Amanda, and son Joe were all with him. His family's pride was his anchor. But then the script flipped in the cruelest way. On June 28th, just before taking the stage, Frank Sutton collapsed and silently slipped away in his dressing room at just 50 years old. If any actor has to die, his co-star Elizabeth Ives recalled, a theater is the place for him to die. And that's exactly what happened, on stage, where he'd always been most alive. Weeks later, his body was transported back to Clarksville, Tennessee, his hometown, and buried in Greenwood Cemetery beside his parents, just as he'd wanted. In 2017, decades after his death, Clarksville unveiled a bronze statue on Franklin Street, honoring the man who once gave them a local boy's dream. Even today, Sutton's impact lingers, not just the booming voice commanding Gomer's attention, but a man who balanced humor with depth, authority with kindness. He was an Army veteran, an Ivy League graduate, a devoted dad, and an intellectual, trapped for a time in the role of the drill sergeant. The man behind Sergeant Carter was far more nuanced than anyone expected. As the curtain rose on the Jim Neighbors Hour, the camera didn't just capture Sutton's next career step. It revealed a man determined to stay relevant, even as audiences tried to file him under Sergeant Carter. He barged into that variety format with the same intensity that defined his military roles, yet unexpectedly revealed a gentler, more playful side. In one moment, the audience would see the stern drill sergeant. In the next, a partner in offbeat comedy sketches with Ronnie Schell and Neighbors himself. It felt like meeting someone you thought you knew, only to find hidden layers you never suspected. That blend of familiarity and surprise kept fans returning, even as the spotlight shifted. Then, Sutton took a step that would surprise many. The dinner theater circuit. In the 1970s, as regional dinner theaters flourished, he embraced this format with gusto. Short on cameras, long on immediacy. Suddenly, audiences could watch him sweat under stage lights, respond to laughter in real time, and pivot between humor and heartbreak without retakes. One of his most daring roles came in Norman, Is That You? A play that boldly explored generational tensions and LGBTQ themes, unusual territory for the era. Sutton portrayed a father bewildered by his son's truth, and viewers say his performance was raw, layered, and deeply human. Imagine a man once known for booming commands turning those same pipes toward empathy, uncertainty, and acceptance, hooking audiences in ways television never could. But Sutton didn't stop there. He returned to screens with gusto, weaving guest appearances across popular 1970s TV shows, from crime dramas and family episodics to dark anthologies. Each role chipped away at the disciplined, authoritative persona that defined him. Networks and casting directors responded in kind. Looser now, more willing to cast him as anything from a troubled father to a weary lawman. He was unrecognizable to the public eye, yet recognizable to those who knew his depth. That shift wasn't easy. It required humility and bravery, and it paid off, showing that he wasn't confined to one stereotype. During this period, his marriage to Toby Egler emerged as more than a footnote. Toby was a soap opera writer with ambition and intelligence to match his own, and together they created a partnership built on respect, creativity, and unwavering support. Friends say they held writing nights in their Beverly Hills home, with Toby burning the midnight oil crafting story arcs for daytime dramas, while Frank dissected character motivations for his next role. Around them, intellectual discourse was the soundtrack, and their children, Joe and Amanda, absorbed the rhythm. It wasn't just a marriage, it was a creative lab. Their son Joe became a playwright and drama professor, whose works on race and justice, such as the Broadway production Vord Dear, carried their hallmark blend of emotional honesty and cultural scrutiny. Audiences who saw Joe's plays noticed the same layered storytelling that had made Frank memorable. Some even joked that Sutton's voice echoed through the dialogue, seldom in tone, but always in courage. Meanwhile, Sutton's daughter Amanda stayed out of the limelight, quietly fueling the family's emotional foundation. She was the sibling who greeted her father at the door after long rehearsal days, offering hugs that reminded him why the spotlight was worth the solitude. In interviews, Frank credited her gentleness and his wife's intellect for keeping him anchored during turbulent times. He said his proudest role wasn't Sergeant Carter, it was being Dad. Simple words but weighty, delivered from a man more accustomed to barking commands than soft reflections. There was a turning point in 1969 when CBS offered him his own spin-off, Sergeant Carter, U.S.M.C., featuring a more diverse cast and more serious themes. Instead, and grow he did. Critics noted that his dinner theater performances brought him closer to his roots, not as a character, but as a storyteller truly seen and heard. He was described as vulnerable yet commanding, a paradox he embodied. Audiences responded, critics responded, and Sutton responded with a renewed sense of purpose. Not chasing fame, but chasing truth. Still, something lingered beneath the spotlight. Attention, perhaps fatigue, maybe even foreshadowing. For someone who'd stormed beaches in the Pacific and stage doors across America, a career of reinvention could only go so far before it demanded more. He joked with friends that he'd outgrown the uniform, but not the discipline. And in private moments, he confessed to Toby that he felt unfinished, like there was one more layer left to peel. Little did they know what came next would be the most dramatic twist yet. Under the bright lights of the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse in Shreveport, he was weeks into the run of love when he collapsed unexpectedly. A heart attack, they'd say later, a sudden end. He was just 50 when he slipped away backstage on June 28, 1974. But even that moment was tinged with irony. He died exactly where his journey began, on stage, in front of people he sought to move. It wasn't messy, it wasn't scandalous. It was profoundly theatrical, as if his last act was scripted to remind us that life and art were inseparable for him. In the days that followed, the story took on shades of myth. A statue rose in Clarksville in 2017, Bronze Sergeant. Carter greeting visitors near the Roxy Theater. His grave at Greenwood Cemetery became a pilgrimage site, and through it all, Toby guarded his legacy like a flame, unfading, untarnished. Frank Sutton's final chapter begins with whispered regrets and a curtain closing too soon. After years of doubling down on his career, his sudden passing left questions dangling. Could he have stepped back? Could a checkup have changed everything? On June 28, 1974, as he prepared to open Lover in Shreveport, a heart attack struck in his dressing room, just before he stepped into the spotlight one last time. It was ironic, cinematic almost. A man who once charged onto war-torn beaches met his end behind the stage curtains he loved. But beneath the shock was a deeper story of unspoken strain, an unrelenting schedule, and habits he downplayed, smoking, exhaustion, missed warnings, that all collided at once. Fans were stunned. Here was the man engraved in cultural memory. The booming voice, the rigid stance, the comic timing. But off-screen, his health was unsteady. Close colleagues discovered he'd been battling recurring chest pains and breathlessness, masking it with jokes and determination to keep going. Doctors reportedly urged tests. Colleagues urged rest. He refused both. And so he marched on, always believing the audience deserved his best, until that final moment when the body gave out. In the aftermath, slack-jawed confusion swept across his family. Toby, his wife of nearly 3 decades, and their children Joe and Amanda, were blindsided. None knew just how fragile his heart had become. Interviews later revealed their disbelief. Sutton had insisted he felt fine, until he didn't. The family's grief was compounded by unanswered what-ifs. What if he had paused? What if he hadn't smoked that cig after rehearsal? What if someone had pressed harder for medical care? Yet today, a clearer picture has emerged. Biographers uncovered letters from his doctors recommending stress tests, Toby's journal entries noting his fatigue, even playbills hinting he struggled through performances in the months before he died. This isn't a tale of scandal, but a sobering portrait of someone who believed his role demanded he never falter. It was a devotion few dared emulate, and one with tragic consequences. As the news spread, so did the myth-making. Rumors whispered of hidden ailments or secret addictions, but the truth wasn't lurid. It was all too human. A man weighed down by decades of heavy smoking, erratic eating, punishing schedules, and a refusal to let weariness show. This wasn't tragedy in the conventional sense. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder that even our heroes carry burdens we can't see. In the wake of his passing, tributes poured in. In 2017, Clarksville installed a bronze statue of Sergeant Carter near the old Roxy Theater, inviting selfies and moments of reflection. Fans still visit his Greenwood Cemetery grave, drawn to the memory of a man who left behind an archetype, but also a deeper, quieter self. Toby kept his memory alive, protecting his narrative, revealing little but ensuring his legacy remained intact. So where does that leave us? Sutton's story rippled across his family, his industry, and the shows that followed. His son Joe, inspired by his father's layered humanity, built a career telling stories that probe identity, justice, and unspoken conflict. Across Hollywood, writers and actors have cited Sergeant Carter as a template for blending toughness with tenderness. Sitcoms, dramedies, and military comedies changed tack after Gomer Pyle. leaning into emotional complexity, where once there was caricature. And then there's the digital age twist. Rare audio recordings of his dinner theater performances surfaced online in recent years, uploaded by collectors who digitally remastered his live voice, from booming commands to hushed confessionals. Those clips are haunting, a living room laughter turning to real, soft sentiment. They've gone viral among classic TV fans, sparking renewed interest in a performer many thought they knew. In the final stretch of his life, Sutton resembled someone running to outrun age, expectations, mortality. But in chipping away at his on-screen persona, he revealed a man who carried love for his craft and his family heavier than any uniform. And even as his heart gave out, he was doing what he loved. On stage, in front of an audience. Tragic? Yes, but fitting, in a cinematic way. Now, let's shift perspective. What if Frank Sutton had had modern financial tools, access to coaching on work-life balance, or health management through structured asset planning? He would have had luxury vehicles, the classic Cadillac he once owned, symbolizing status. His home in Beverly Hills, likely insured under high-value policies. Contracts might have granted him a lifetime residual for reruns and streaming. Today, such a career could mean portfolio diversification, real estate investments, brand deals, maybe a private plane for touring shows. Sutton had none of that. He lived paycheck to stage check. The takeaway? Celebrity wealth isn't just about fame, it's about planning for longevity. Insurance, balanced contracts, diversified earnings, and health safeguards could have safeguarded him. Frank's journey underscores a lesson. Charisma and dedication can propel careers, but without strategic health and financial planning, even giants fall. He was a war hero turned Ivy League scholar, a sitcom icon, a nuanced stage actor, and yet, behind it all, the lines of risk went unread. The curtain falls, but the question remains: what kind of hero endures? Sutton showed us that true strength lies not in commanding voices, but in stepping back before the heart calls time. His story lingers, on screen, in song, in the silent weight of legacy. And perhaps that's the closing scene we're meant to carry forward. Frank Sutton gave everything to his craft, his strength, his spirit, and ultimately, his health. Behind the laughs and salutes was a man driven by purpose, but haunted by the pressure to be unbreakable. His legacy reminds us that even our heroes are human, and sometimes the cost of keeping up appearances is far greater than we realize. Through love, loss, and the enduring power of memory, his story still echoes across generations of fans and creators alike. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. What do you remember most about Frank Sutton? And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of the legends behind the spotlight. Because next time, we're diving into the rise and shocking fall of another beloved icon.